This week on Head to Head, Bob Iger steps down as Disney CEO. We look at Kylo Ren before and after his fall. And of course, we talk about the High Republic, and it's all right after this.
You're listening to Head, a Star Wars podcast. Two fans, two generations, all things Star Wars begins now.
Hello, everybody. I'm Eric Mansell.
And I'm Daryl Sanders.
And we're your hosts for this podcast. I wanted to bring attention, since we usually start this show out on our wide shot. You guys may have noticed that we have all these Star Wars-related Funko Pops up here.
Oh, yes.
So I don't know how you guys or how you actually feel about this, but it's funny. I have a coworker who totally turned me on to these things. Now, it turns out, you remember that Boba Fett one that I had in the TV studio forever? Yeah. That was one of the earlier versions. Mm-hmm. And he basically collects all these pops, and he was telling me about them and, you know, everything like that. And he started, I don't know how he did it, but he got me to buy a couple of Star Wars ones. Then I bought a couple more, and then a couple more.
It became a full-blown addiction.
Yeah, and then it started to get to the point where it's like, oh, this new, you know, whatever's coming out, and it's like, oh, you got to check it out. And so then I would go online and check it out, and before I knew it, I was pre-ordering this stupid thing, and I don't even know what happened. Which is, then I realized when we decided to start doing these on video, that it would be really cool to have them as a background.
True.
And if I ever do a music-related show, I'll probably buy a bunch of music-related ones. But it just trips me out because if you look at, like, everybody from John Campea to, like, all these other guys, they all have these things in the background, which I think is, so we're in good company.
Yes, we are.
This is where I say, well, what do you guys think of Funko Pops? Hey, what do you think of them? Leave them in the comment section. But, hey, after, you know, we go to the, like, Hot Topic or wherever we get our Funko Pops, we have to go get our drinks somewhere.
Yes, sir.
All right, let's go to the Cantina.
Pour it out. All right. So, this week, our own Uncle Bob.
Bob
Iger steps down as CEO of Walt Disney. So,
that's a big deal.
Man.
That's like a really big deal.
So he's been threatening to retire for some years.
And that's the thing that's funny about it, is that everybody talks about it and is like, oh, you know, he's like stepping down. And I've been thinking the whole time, like, he's been saying it for a little while now that he just wanted to get Disney to a certain point.
Yep.
And then he was going to do it. And I remember he was going to do it not too long before the Fox merger thing came up. And then he said, I want to get everybody through that. Mm-hmm. But here's what's interesting to me about this announcement. It's not so much that he's stepping down. It's the fact that he's going into this whole like creative role or something like that.
So now he's going to become the creative director, and
that's it, creative director.
Yeah, so he's pretty much put another Bob.
Yeah.
I can't remember his last name. It starts with a C. I don't want to butcher it, but
yeah, I know.
We just call him that other Bob.
Bob C.
Bob C. Yeah, there we go. So Bob C. now is going to take the control over the business side of it, while
right, and he used to be the parks guy.
Yeah,
from what I remember.
And so now Iger is taking over the creative thing because he feels like that's where a lot of attention needs to be. Amen to that. Mm-hmm. So I think that he really kind of sees like, okay, you know what? This needs my hand and my attention. He also even admitted himself that like Disney was doing better when they actually had a creative lead. So that just shows that they never really had one, because it's like, well, why would you need to create it now if you've already had it? So I think that's good. At least Disney's moving in the right direction in that regard, which also speaks to your point that you frequently make that, well, you and I both, but you've really been the champion of it, of plan this stuff out and actually have, and I think because Bob was running the business of the parks and everything like that, Disney as a whole, he couldn't actually pay attention to all the creative stuff that's going on. So now he can focus on Marvel and all the other different properties. But of course, the one we hold near dear, Star Wars. And I really hope that this is a good sign for Star Wars. I really hope that moving forward, they actually really look at Star Wars and look at it as a whole, not just year to year or character to character or anything like that, but actually look at the entire franchise and say, hey, where do we want to go in the next 10 years? Mm-hmm. Where do we want to go in the next 20 years? Where do we want to go in the next 2 or 3? And really take steps and say, okay, here's how we're going to get to this point. Here's how we're going to get to this point. Yep.
and everything else. So I think that this is great news, but and you obviously think it's great news.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Definitely.
Okay.
Don't
want to speak for you, man. I just, I want to make sure that we're okay.
Yeah, you really are, Han. I don't want to speak for you.
And you didn't really shave, so you could be Chewy.
Well, I use the city as your co-pilot.
There you go. But what about you guys? What do you think? You think this whole Bob Iger thing is a good move? Are you a little bit nervous about it? Does it even matter to you? Sometimes people are just like, I don't really care who's in charge. Although I think that would be a mistake, but I can understand, that point of view. But let us know in the comments section, what you guys are thinking. All right, what do we got next?
All right, so next we have Diego Luna is speaking about his new series, The Cassian Andor. So that's something we've always talked about because we haven't heard anything really much about the Cassian Andor series. But
no.
Some things are starting to kind of surface a little bit. He was asked about the series, and he's really, really excited about it. Of course, we know we're getting K2SO back in this, but played by Alan Tudyk. But I guess the premise of it is that we're kind of going to see like his background, how he kind of came into the whole resistance or the beginning of the rebellion, really. And then he's really talking about, like, we know how, much like Rogue, it's going to be kind of like a lot like Rogue One.
Yeah, I'd always assume that, too.
We know how it's going to end.
Yeah.
So for him, he kind of like, or how my story, it's just, how do we get there? And so I think that's
it's like, how do we get to Rogue One, basically?
Yeah. And I think this is where we're really going to get into the meat of him and what's kind of going on, what led to it's going to have a lot of little political twists and things like that.
What I'm hoping, because one of the things that they had actually revealed in Rogue One is that he was a separatist at one point.
Mm-hmm.
And after that, that's why he hated the Jedi and everything like that, because from his point of view,
yep,
the Jedi wiped out his people, and it's kind of like that, how the Lost Stars thing kind of humanized the Empire a lot.
Yeah.
And you see that there were just a lot of normal people who really felt like they were doing the right thing. It wasn't like the evil Empire. It was more like, from their point of view, they were doing what was right, and the rebels were actually terrorists.
Yeah.
So you got to see that
flip side.
Yeah, that little flip side almost. And I would like to see from the whole Cassian Andor perspective, what was his life like as a separatist? I mean, granted, he was a lot younger then, so I'm sure that maybe we'll see flashbacks or something like that, but they can't obviously dwell too far into that. Yeah. But I would like to see a little bit more of that explored. I think that would be kind of a good thing.
Mm-hmm, definitely. Like I said, it's still on track. We still don't have a date or what it's going to be called yet.
At least they're talking about
it.
At
least we're actually starting to hear things about it.
Because that was one of the ones that you never really heard much about.
Yeah, and it was announced early. So
yeah, it was announced actually before Obi-Wan was.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. We've heard more about that than
exactly.
This, so.
You would almost think that Obi-Wan would have been the later series and Cassian would have been next up after Mandalorian, but it looks like the opposite is true. So we still don't have any kind of release date then?
Not yet.
Any year?
I think it
would have to almost be 2021 at this point because I can't see them. If it was beyond 2021, I can't see them announcing it too early.
Well, yeah, because they got, of course, with Mandalorian Season 2 coming out.
Sure.
So that's going to be the thing. Unless it takes the place, like I said, probably early 2021, where it's probably going to replace Clone Wars. That's probably what's going to happen.
Yeah, that could be. And it makes you wonder, are they going to do something like a
fall show?
Yeah, kind of fall winter, like a February, October sort of thing.
And that would be cool.
That would be cool.
At least it always keeps you engaged in something.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind seeing that. Well, what about you guys? What do you think of this Cassian Andor series? First of all, do you even care about Cassian Andor? Because there's some people out there that, quite frankly, don't necessarily care enough about that character to be invested in a series. But let us know in the comment section what you guys are thinking. All right, what do we got next?
All right, well, The Rise of Skywalker is finally on our way to our homes.
It is. Yes. It's actually really soon. Yeah,
really soon. March 14th, I think it's going to start the HD streaming.
Oh, yeah, so then it's out.
Yep, and then...
coming up.
The DVD is actually towards the end of the month.
Yeah, I think it was like the
24th or something like that.
Something like that.
Yeah. So,
maybe even the 31st. I remember reading a little bit about it, but...
And then, of course, they're going to release the whole Ultimate like Saga box set with everything.
Now, is that still a Best Buy exclusive? The Skywalker Saga, I think, is what it was called.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
I had read that it was a Best Buy exclusive for a while, but I'm not sure if that's still the case or what.
I know for the Rise of Skywalker, they actually have a featurette that say listed some of the features they're going to have on there, like the scoring of it with John Williams and things like that. And they have a couple other there's some extended scenes with that desert scene that we saw, the Desert Land Speeder chase scene.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Well, it's kind of funny, too, because obviously physical media is still the best bet, especially if you're looking at 4K. You're going to get it in Atmos sound. You're going to get an actual really clean, full resolution. Because the thing that's funny was I was watching this YouTube channel. I think it's Films at Home. I'll find it and put a link into the show notes or whatever. But essentially, what this guy was saying, and it makes a lot of sense too, is in the sense of even the Disney 4K versions that we're getting on Disney Plus right now, they're not really technically good 4K transfers. And he was hoping with the Skywalker Saga, because one of the significant things about the Skywalker Saga box set or whatever is it's going to be the 4K versions of all the movies, which will be the first time we've ever gotten 4K versions of all the Saga movies.
Yep.
So right now, I think all we have, I don't even think Force Awakens. I think it's just Last Jedi and Solo that are in 4K.
Okay.
At the moment. Of course, Rise of Skywalker too, but now they're going to go back and do
Phantom Menace.
Exactly, all those. So we're hoping that they're going to be better transfers than what we saw, previously.
Yeah, so these, I don't think this will include, though, Rogue One.
No, it doesn't. It's not Rogue One or Solo because it's just the Saga films, the Skywalker Saga. That's why they call it that instead of the Star Wars Saga or something.
Yeah.
Because they want to show, look, this is just episodes 1 through 9. You're not going to get any of the standalones.
Yep.
Which right now there's only 2 of them, so. But I'm looking forward to it. It's funny because I have the 4K version of The Last Jedi, and I really enjoy that, actually. I have Solo, but I have the digital versions of The Force Awakens and Rogue One, I believe. So I have somewhat of a mix. I've started getting more into the digital version. For a long time, I resisted it. I was really on board with music, but for some reason, I still like the physical copies of the movies, and a lot of that has to do with the fact that I just like knowing that I'm going to get the same. It's not going to depend on, how many people are using my Wi-Fi that day, as far as how good my resolution and bandwidth and all that is.
True. I mean, I'm happy just that it's coming out because, I never got a chance to show my grandfather.
Yeah, and my parents couldn't get out to the theater to see it.
So,
and, my mom, of course, listens to our podcast faithfully, so it's kind of like she's
Mom.
Constantly, right? She's constantly like hearing us talk about all these Rise of Skywalker things, although the movie's been completely spoiled for her at this point.
Yeah.
But she's like, well, did this happen or whatever? And I'm like, oh. So I know she's dying to see this movie, so I'm glad that it's coming out too. And I'm glad the 4K version's coming out because I always.
Yeah, and I actually really want to see it again too. So
Yeah. I mean, I thought about going to see it in the theater. It's still there.
Yep.
I thought about going to see it again just because I could, but at this point, I think I'm just going to wait for the disc.
Cool.
But what about you guys? Are you guys excited about it? Well, for those of you who actually like The Rise of Skywalker, are you excited about it? Do you not care? And which version are you going to buy? Are you going to buy the streaming version, or are you going to buy the 4K version or Blu-ray version? In other words, physical or streaming. Which one are you going to buy? Let us know in the comments section, and let us know why. It's important. Let us know why. All right. What do we got next?
Well, it's time to put away the drinks, my friend.
Yes, it is. We got to leave the cantina.
Gonna stretch a little bit.
Yeah, it's a sad day when we leave the cantina. It's always relaxing.
Yeah.
Now we got to go fight.
Yep. We got to go warm up because I think we're going to fight today.
All right.
All right. We're going to go into Duel of the Fates. All right. So this week we have, would you rather see Kylo as a Jedi before his fall to the dark side, Or would you rather see a story after his redemption?
Well,
if he survived, that was.
Yeah.
I mean,
I know, and I kind of figured that that's where you were going with it.
But just for clarity, yes, if he would have survived.
I would rather have seen the post, like, after his redemption. It's like my mind locked up for a second. I'm like, I couldn't even talk. Just not good when you're hosting a podcast.
So you got that Kylo mind thing.
I did. It was like it was frozen. It was weird. It's like I'm stroking out or something.
Let it go.
But yes, definitely post-redemption, and here's why. First of all, there's a lot of things right now. The whole Rise of Kylo Ren comic series is talking about his fall and everything. And granted, it would be interesting to see either a Disney Plus series or a movie on that, because it's very interesting to see, even though we've seen other light side characters fall to the dark side before, it would be interesting to see why he's still tempted by the light, because to my knowledge, he's the only dark side guy that's ever been constantly tempted by the light side of the Force. And it's like, why? Probably because, his uncle's Luke Skywalker and his mom is Princess Leia and his dad's Han Solo. But at the same time, it's still an interesting storyline. But here's the thing. If he had survived, imagine, this is what was interesting about if Darth Vader had survived. He would now have to face all these people. And there's a lot of rich, amazing stories that they could tell. If you have a redeemed Kylo Ren that now has to go back and pretty much face what he's done to everybody. Yeah. And knowing that he's a good person now, he would want to do that, and he would want to make amends. And what would he do to make amends? And I'll be honest, it was kind of cool seeing a good Kylo there for 10 minutes or whatever it was in the film. Yeah. I mean, I think... I actually like... Because that Kylo Ren's probably my favorite character of the sequel trilogy, and I love him as a bad guy. Yeah. But I have to say, I think I like him better as a good guy. I thought he was kind of funny, and, he's just, I don't know, there was something about it, because I was one of those guys that did not want to see him be redeemed. Well, yeah, I didn't either. I think... But when he was, I was like, I'm kind of liking this. Well, I think, normally... Well, first, let me start here. I was going to say... the same thing as you, as far as his redemption story would be way more interesting to me. But just to make things interesting and spice it up, I'm going to go the opposite way. Well, you could very well, because honestly, I don't know if I necessarily have strong feelings about this either way. I mean, I think they're stronger for the post-redemption. But look, if you're going before the fall, I'm good with that too, because like I was going to say before, we're seeing his fall, but we're not seeing too much material when he was good Kylo back then, and that would be kind of cool to see. Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. I think that would be interesting to see, like, okay, him first going off to train with his Uncle Luke, him starting out meeting kids and stuff like that who are, force sensitive like himself. Seeing him study, was he a prodigy, and some people just kind of looked at him and like, oh, you're doing this because you're Luke Skywalker's nephew. Like, you guys, you got to wonder, like, what is a young Jedi Academy? What does that look like under his... All the difficulties of having to live up to his uncle and his dad and his mom. I mean, that can't be easy. That's a lot of pressure. And then, of course, it's like, when did he become so enamored with Vader? And when did he meet and become enamored of Snoke? Rise of Kylo Ren comic series shows how he goes to Snoke for advice, and Snoke comes off as this kindly old man, which goes back to last week when we were talking about who's more intimidating. Snoke wasn't really all that intimidating in his previous life, but we know that changed. So it would be really interesting to see that as well. Definitely. All right, but what do you guys think? You guys want to see before the fall the good Jedi Knight version of Kylo Ren going on adventures with his uncle and his dad and his mom? Well, that sounds like a family sitcom or something. But do you want to see that, or do you want to see what would happen if Kylo had survived and it was a post-redemption return to good? Or now he's trying to be a Jedi again, but this time he has to deal with all the sins of his past. Oh, that just sounds more interesting to me. But what do you guys think? Let us know in the comments section. We'd love to hear from you. All right, what's the time for now?
It's time for a certain point of view.
All right.
Yep. It's our time to feature our topic of the week. And this week we are talking about Project Luminous.
Ooh, but what's Project Luminous?
I'll tell you what it is. It's the High Republic.
The High Republic.
Yeah.
Right.
So for maybe about a couple of weeks, there have been rumors about this whole Project Luminous
Dude, I got to
thing.
tell you, man, when I first read the phrase the High Republic, I didn't even connect it at first to Project Luminous, right? And I'm going, High Republic? What's a High Republic? Did they just... Then I started getting mad because I actually thought that Disney was going to change the name of the Old Republic and call it the High Republic. I'm like, oh, come on.
I see you, yeah.
Then I read when it actually was, though, and I'm like, oh, all right, that's weird. Is that new? Then I thought maybe I missed something. Like, well, what comic features that?
Yeah, so this is actually really, really excites me because this is something that I really want to see, like, bad. So Project Luminous is something that, that was kind of kept, that was like in the working title, but then it was originally, and now it's been released as the High Republic. Mm-hmm. And this is like the new direction that Star Wars is going to go in and it's going to feature. So they already have like books and comics already lined up and probably films and series that's going to actually feature all this stuff.
Claudia Gray's
I was just about to say Claudia Gray. As soon as I saw that name, I was like, oh, yes. So like, she's actually like kind of one of the ones to kick it off pretty much with her book. And the High Republic, for those of you who do not know, it basically takes place 200 years before the events of the Phantom Menace. And it pretty much is a time period where the Jedi are at the zenith of power. So I think this is going to be really interesting for, at least for fans like myself, because one, you kind of always wanted to see what the Jedi were like at that time.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then for those of you who are, who love lightsaber duels like myself, this is the time period in which all that's going to happen.
Well, yeah, and here's what's interesting to me about it. So when you compare that to the Old Republic, which is like 10,000 years or something before A New Hope, at least 1,000. It's like 1,000 to 15,000 or something like that. Mm-hmm. Okay, now the Sith are in power, so a lot of those things you get in the Old Republic is Sith versus Jedi, and, they're always trying to one-up each other, and on it goes. So they were kind of at a zenith at that point. But what's interesting to me about the High Republic is the Sith have been extinct for a millennia, we know. So any Jedi in this era has never even really encountered or seen a Sith.
Yeah.
And wouldn't for another couple hundred years until Episode 1. And, of course, a lot of the bad guys are, I forgot what they were called. They're almost like these pirate, rogue, weird villains or something, and I know they're lining up other villains in this thing as well.
And that's where I was really going to go, because I'm like, okay, well, they talk about the Jedi but not Sith because they can't, because they've been extinct for a while.
Exactly.
So, or are they really? Because part of me wonders that they were just hiding out on Exegol.
Well, they probably were, but remember that Yoda and all those, when Qui-Gon went up and said, it was, remember, because Mace is all like, a Sith Lord?
Yeah.
And it's like, well, they've been extinct for millennia. It can't be.
Right.
It was almost like, well, we got to investigate this because it can't be. So that right there, is canon proof that, they're not going to go back on that.
All right, you can't. So my whole thing is like, well, who are you going to have that's actually going to?
Well, it was like, and they showed pictures of them. I mean, there's like these like really crazy droid-like characters. There was these other like pirate-like guys. I mean, they've got some villains lined up. But let me just take a second because I need to say this. Uh-oh. This is how the movie should have been handled.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
They get all these writers and these people together. They flesh out a storyline.
Yes.
And then they go ahead and execute it in a very planned and methodical manner to where every writer, everybody knows, here's your part of the story. Here's what you have to do. Here's where you have to go. Why is it so hard? Why didn't they do this with the movies? I had to get that off my chest because when I read this, I mean, on one hand, I don't want to get mad because it's like, well, this is what
we want.
Yeah, what we want, right?
Why didn't we get this earlier?
But my whole thing is like, you guys came up with this all by your lonesome. Why didn't you think about this with the movies? Why did you let the sequel trilogy be such a mess? I mean, if it wasn't for the talent of the directors and the writers, it would have been all over the place. But you think, and again, I'm one of those people that actually likes the sequel trilogy movies.
Yeah, me too.
Some more than others, but at the same time, I admit the weaknesses of them. And that's my point. They could have been better. I just think about how much better it could have been. Even though I like the sequel trilogy just fine, I think that fans' whole attitude towards it would have been so much closer to the original trilogy if they had just done what they're doing with the High Republic.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think that's, but see, you know, this is where, and like I like the fact that they're giving us this portion, because I still don't think that what are their names? Benioff and Weiss. You know, I still think they're still going to do Old Republic.
Yeah,
and I think this is a good. I don't want to say
like a gateway course, sort of.
But I think this is a good tester, if you will, to kind of like, okay, you know what? We won't go Old Republic. We'll go here.
That's true, because, okay, we won't go too far back, but we'll go far enough back that we're not trapped in the storylines of all these characters.
And we can bring in, now you can bring all these different types of directors. You have all these different type of writers and things like that, and characters that are like, okay, we can really, because if you got 200 years before the events of Phantom Menace, well, that's a whole span of time that you can just ride off into the sunset if you wanted to.
Sure.
But then you still can go further back if you want.
Here's the funny thing.
That's
Look at how many stories they came up with and are still coming up with between episodes 3 and 4, and that was only like 30 years.
That's what I'm saying, yeah.
Imagine what you could do with 200.
My point exactly.
And what really struck me as interesting when I was reading all about this whole High Republic stuff is the fact that the Jedi are going to be a lot different than what we've seen. That caught my ear.
Looking at some of their lightsabers, I mean, he's got like a Kylo Ren style hilt, so I'm thinking like, okay, how are they going to talk?
How are they going to talk? How are they going to act? How are they going to be? What is the powers are going to see?
Yeah, what do the worlds look like back then? Because now, like, okay, we see what Naboo and everything was like then. Is it going to be more?
That's true. Even the difference between the prequels and the original trilogy, it was quite a bit.
Yeah, because like everything looked lived in and used and beat up.
Well, and going to that point, you also have. So the prequel trilogy, things were falling apart and they were entering into a war, and then the original trilogy, everything was just basically under this imperial rule. And then the sequel trilogy, they're back at war again. So this is going to be the first time period where, these guys are basically peacekeepers. They're not... Yeah. The galaxy isn't at war. So what's that going to look like?
And I think we're really going to get into the philosophies of the Jedi. I think we're really going to start getting into the things that we've talked about, the nature of the Force and things of that nature, because I think those topics of discussion are going to be more so prevalent in that time period. Because
I hope so.
What else are you going to? I mean, because you don't have Sith Lords, so it's like. And to my knowledge, I mean, you might have like a Dark Jedi or somebody.
Yeah, I'm sure that
here and there or something like that.
So they're not going to have Sith Lords, but I would find it hard pressed if we didn't see the dark side of the Force represented somehow. Yeah,
maybe in a Dark Jedi or like a person who maybe they try to recruit them into the Jedi thing,
or maybe they come up with a different group.
Yeah, that's true.
The only problem though. 200 years might be a tad close to come up with a new group, because if you came up with a new group, then the natural question is going to be, well,
what happened to them?
You could say the Sith wiped them out, maybe, but yeah, it's going to be
in 200 years. I mean, you could wipe somebody out in 200 years. I mean,
yeah, that's true.
So
that's a good point.
Yeah.
All right, but what about you guys? Are you guys into this whole High Republic thing? Do you wish that it had been the Old Republic instead of the High Republic, or have you just kind of lost interest and you're like, I don't even care about any of this stuff? Let us know in the comments section, because the problem with Star Wars nowadays is it's all over the place. So we're really interested to know what you guys are thinking. Let us know, like I said, in the comments below. All right, it's time for one of my favorite segments. I say this every show. It's time to clear your mind.
Relax, relate, release.
That's right. It's time to clear our minds. We're going to answer your questions that you guys submit to us Who's first? What do we got?
All right. First question comes from Sam Fanny. His question is, I heard that they're answering the big question about how Palpatine returned in other media. Do you know which medium?
No, I don't actually know which medium. I haven't heard anything.
Now, the only thing I've heard that they've just talked about is the new encyclopedia actually explains it.
Okay, well, that would make sense because my answer was going to be that even though there's been nothing official, at least other than what you just said, a book would probably be... But the comic could do it too, because the comic is basically giving us the whole background on Kylo Ren and how Snoke came to the power and all this stuff. So if I had to guess, I'm going to say it's either going to be a novel, like some sort of standalone novel, or it's going to be a comic. That's pretty much what I'm thinking we're going to see, because I do agree that we need to see something about how this happened. You can't just drop on me that, oh yeah, Palpatine just made this announcement. Yeah, guys, I'm back. And everybody's all like, oh, okay, Palpatine's back.
Yeah, right.
And then everybody's throwing the word Sith around like it's the most common thing in the universe. But all right, I'm going to stop.
Tangent alert.
I'm gonna stop right now. I'm gonna stop right here. The answer is no. I haven't heard anything about it, but my guess would be a book or a novel. Who do we have next? Or a book or a comic?
It's like,
I'm just gonna,
ladies and gentlemen, this is like anger management, live.
I'm not gonna go into it in the show.
Oh my God.
I made a promise to my therapist.
So next we have Xavier Fuller. He asked a question: which saga movie has the best visuals in your opinion?
And I see you picked one of your favorites.
It may have been, possibly.
I'm probably gonna have to go with Rogue One as one of the ones.
Rogue One definitely is.
You know, I mean, it's really kind of a hard thing to pinpoint, especially, like I said, one of the things, in case you guys don't know, because I don't want people watching the show going, what's up with these guys? It's like they either don't remember, or they don't know, or they're... So one of the things that I like to do, because we try to keep our conversations very natural. I mean, we put stuff in segments and everything, so we do try to run an actual show here, but at the same time, we're trying to keep it more the dynamics of what created the show in the first place. It's just us having a conversation about Star Wars. But what I don't like, and what a lot of people don't like, is just when people are just rambling and it just seems like you just walked in on a conversation. Now, there's a place for that. There's people that is their favorite kind of podcast. And I got plenty of podcasting friends who basically do just have conversations or whatever. But we try to keep it more controlled. But the thing is, in order to keep some of the spontaneity, I try not to study up too much. I try to make everything as spontaneous as possible and not research everything to death. So it's because we're not really a Star Wars news show per se. We're a discussion show. So to that end, I never really put a lot of thought into this. But Rogue One definitely comes to mind as I'd say that, or Empire Strikes Back. I really liked a lot of the visuals in Empire Strikes Back a lot. And Revenge of the Sith, I thought had some really cool, like the opera scene I thought was a great visual.
Okay.
You know, some of the other elements that they had in there I thought was cool, but
yeah, I think for me it would be Rogue One and The Force Awakens. I think those two.
I could see that. You know what? The Force Awakens has some tremendous visuals in it as well.
Yeah, this one.
Like this.
Yeah.
There's a couple too, you know, some.
And I was actually just watching it not too long ago, and it was just, you know, watching the Millennium Falcon, you know, just how he got certain shots.
Well, you can even throw Rise of Skywalker in there too. He had some really cool stuff in there.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Even that first shot with like the troopers on that barge when they first land, and lights like the lighters flickering, and you kind of first see the look of the troopers.
Yeah, I mean, it's just there's just a lot of,
gives me chills.
Look, Star Wars is known for its visuals, so it's really difficult to pick one. But yeah, I got to keep going to Rogue One, Empire, and probably Force Awakens. I'm gonna say that's my top three.
Yeah,
and the order changes daily. All right, well,
I think that's it for today.
Yeah, I think that's going to wrap it up for this week. You know, if you guys have anything that is on your mind, or, you know, like you'd like to congratulate us on how good our show is, leave that in the comments section below. If you guys want to talk about anything from the Star Wars visuals to, anything in our Duel of Fates, like Kylo before or after his fall or after his redemption. Any of the things that we talked about. We'd love to hear from you guys. Leave it in the comment section below.
If you have the number to a good therapist for Eric.
Yes.
Please leave that.
Because obviously the one I have isn't working, right?
He force choked the last one.
Well, that's going to do it for this week, everybody. We'll see you guys next week. I'm Eric Vansel.
I'm Daryl Sanders.
May the Force be with you.
Always.
Head to Head, a Star Wars podcast. Be sure to follow us on Twitter @HeadToHeadSW. Submit your questions for our next show. Visit our official website at headtoheadswpodcast.com. Until next time, may the Force be with you, always.